All right, welcome back to another episode of Culture Camp. Leigh, David, got you on. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Great to be back, Jason.
Great to be here, Jason.
If you've been
Thank you.
following along, Culture Camp and Potentia have been doing this. This has been an unbelievable experience for myself. I've gotten a ton of great feedback, messages, DMs, texts, all kinds of different things from this. So, Leigh, David, thank you so much for doing this. This is our second episode talking about family business, which, David, Leigh, and I have a lot of experience in this. And so I want to keep diving deeper into it because I kind of feel like family businesses are starting to become maybe a little bit more common. I don't know. Like I feel like maybe not more common, but I feel like a lot of my friends and family are starting to actually do more family businesses together. And so I want to ask you first, David, what is one of the best tips that you have for a family business?
It's a great question, a great place to start. I'm going to give you a couple. The first one is really simple. If you're thinking about transition, start way earlier than you think you should. So
Okay.
I believe it was the Family Business Institute several years ago looked at a study, and they said that if you start the transition process 10 plus years before the actual event happens, meaning majority ownership goes to the next generation, 10 plus years, you've got an 85% success rate of still being around a decade later.
Wow.
Okay? If you drop below 10 years, it drops down to 50-50 for between 3 to 9. You drop below 2, and we don't even want to talk about those numbers because those are numbers that you just don't even want to put yourself in that situation. So literally thinking about if you think your family business one day, my son or my daughter or my niece or my nephew is 10, 12, 14 years old, it might not be too early to start some sort of formal family business training and understanding. I know I worked with one organization. They have a large extended family. And the very first one of the nieces and nephews that was going to come in, they held 2 days. The older generation had 2 days of just defining how we want to handle the incoming generation. And so totally transformed how, when, if family members were able to come in. They had certain criteria that were required. Like one of the ones I loved was everyone has to start in a frontline role and work their way up. And then in order to move up, they have to be in the top 20 to 25% of all performers in their role. And the only exception to that is if you want to come in as a manager, the company's board, which had several non-family members, had to approve it. So it couldn't become you're in a role because you're blood. You had to actually perform. So that's the first thing, is start early. The second one really has to do with hats, and realize that we have lots of hats we wear as families, members in family business. And the first big one to separate is, are we speaking as someone in the business, an employee or an owner, or am I speaking as a family member? And so do I have my family member hat on, my owner hat, or employee hat? Because those are 3 different hats. And I don't remember where we've got it, but it's a fairly common story in family business folklore. And it's about a father whose son was coming up in the business and plateaued in a sales type role, a sales management type role. They'd really been trying to get the performance out of that department, and they just weren't getting it done. And so the father actually had 2 hats on his desk, and he called his son in to have a really tough conversation. And he realized he's not my son. He's the sales manager, VP of sales at this point. So his son came in, he put a hat on and it said CEO on the top. And he said, we've given this a shot. You've tried hard. We're just not getting the results. I'm sorry, but this is your severance package. And so he took his CEO hat off, put it down, picked up the other hat that said Dad, put the hat on and said, "Hi, son, I hear you just got fired. What can I do to help?"
Wow.
Okay, so that's an extreme example, but it actually is helpful. I've had not physical hats, but I know I have taken cards and made them into a triangle. And before you can speak at a family business meeting, you have to pick it up and identify, am I speaking as a son? Am I speaking as an owner? Am I speaking as a manager? Am I speaking as a brother or a sister? And you actually have to turn that towards the family so they know hat you're wearing at that time. And I can't tell you how many times people stopped, they picked up their triangle, they looked at it, and then they put it back down because they wanted to speak from the wrong reference.
Wow. That's awesome. That's really cool.
I enjoy that story, David, when you tell it.
And it's helpful. I don't know about you, Leigh, if you use this, but I worked with my brother for about, one of my brothers for about 20 years, and I worked with my father for about 5. And most of the time, we were pretty good about in conversation. Many times, especially if we're at the office late at night and there weren't many other people around, I'd come in, or we'd go to each other's office. I was in a cube, he was in an office. And I walked through the front door and I'd say, hey, I need to have a brother conversation. Okay. And it might even be about business, but he knew he was speaking to me as a brother. Other times I would say, hey, this is an employee boss conversation. And so we put on different hats. And there were times when he would say, David, you have a different expertise. I want you to put your consultant hat on. You're now not an employee of this company. You're not a brother. You're consulting me in an area where you have expertise that I don't have. And so I want you to speak to me like an external consultant would speak to me, not like you would speak to your boss. Okay.
Right.
And so it's a difficult thing, but the earlier you can do it and model it, the better it is. So that's the other way to use that concept of hats, which can be very, very helpful. And I'd like to say we're perfect. I don't know about you guys, but your family's perfect? Because I know ours wasn't. We did a pretty good job, but we weren't perfect by any means.
We're a family, so that's just by the name family means not perfect.
Right.
So.
And Leigh, I know we were talking about one of the things where most family businesses struggle and is a liquidity event when we decide to sell all or part of a business. And this will be my last kind of big tip, Jason, is I think every family business should get every family member with ownership, and maybe not even ownership, but that's every family member that's in the family business, and possibly even spouses, together in a room once a year and spend a minimum of 1 hour talking about why we should sell the family business this year.
Why we should sell.
Why we should. Now, at the end of that, you may have no desire whatsoever to sell it, but here's the reason it's important. It's conditioning everyone in the family business to realize the family business isn't a family member. It's not an unconditional part of the family, and there are times when it's best for the family to sell the family business. And by doing that once a year, you're conditioning every family member to think in those terms that there could be a day when the best thing for the family is to sell the family business. And let's talk about what those are. And so even if there's a 0% chance of selling, that's actually the best year to do it because it's most comfortable and it's not real yet.
Right. No, I think it totally makes sense. I think that's awesome advice. For sure.
Building on that point, and what Jason, we've talked about as well as with David, it's getting to the point where you actually, as a family, get comfortable talking about the uncomfortable, which a lot of times is more about, hey, this is what I want, this is what I need, because it affects each family member slightly different. For example, generationally, some people are given our family business and the business for 40 years, still in the business. Selling it had a different effect. It was another generation in for 20. For myself, I started out young, so selling was a different story. But I do remember doing what you talked about, David. We actually had the whole family come together, and my dad led it and listened to the idea. But at the end of the day, we didn't sell it. What we ended up doing is selling parts of the business. So, and those times when we sold parts of the business were probably the best thing that could have been done at that point in time for the overall organization. The key is, and used a great word, the company is not unconditionally, it's not conditionally part of the family, but people get emotionally connected to the business. And there are points in time where that actually overrides the right decision. And I've experienced that as well.
Yep.
But I think that's a very important piece that you brought out is it is not a family member. And even though there's history with it, sometimes it's best to allow it to move on for the benefit of everyone in the family, not just a few. So those are tough decisions to make, and they're not easy conversations to have. But I like the way you put it, is you just make it part of what you do annually, and you turn it into a process that you as an organization follow. And whoever's leading the company carries that forward from one generation to the next. I think the other one is getting people ready to join the business. So I started just like all of you, but actually in a manufacturing plant. And I started in the maintenance and worked my way through the organization. I don't think I touched anything with sales until I was probably close to the end of college. But I knew every darn job in the entire company. But again, I'd add one more thing is, and we're going to get into this in a minute, is what is actually needed for each individual in the family? What's their strength, and how do we optimize the strengths? Sometimes being the eldest doesn't mean you should be running it. I being the eldest of a family, it might be someone middle of the family, someone even a cousin, not even the direct family. Again, you have to set up criteria, and a lot of organizations don't set up enough criteria around what it takes to move into a true leadership role, let alone a board role.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm the baby. I mean, I'm a twin, so
Right.
we are the babies, even though I'm a minute older. But I ran, the company. My brothers worked for me, and my sister, she's up in Canada, but so she wasn't a part of the business. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people automatically thought, other people should run it or whatever. But it was just my natural style. I had done things previously, and so that's kind of what, the decision we made. So, I totally get that. And I think that there's a lot of value. Like I always get asked this question of like, one, how do we do, how do we have the youngins come up in the family business? And then two, it's just parenting advice. How do we not spoil them to death? How do we treat them like dirt at the family business? And then how do we go home and not over spoil them? I'm like, that's a great question. But I think
you just got to get two hats, Jason. Two hats.
Right.
I love the hats
for me,
analogy.
Like I always feel like, and this is probably maybe a bad thing, but I feel like I can have way more direct conversations with family than I can anybody else. Like I have a fear of having direct conversations. Like I just got back from a very direct conversation about 30 minutes ago, but that actually it was probably the most comfortable I've ever been. But I mean, I've let my brothers go 3 different times, laid them off, let them go, fired them, like different things, hired them back. Like they're just playing this teeter-totter. And I'm just like, hey, it is what it is. This is what we have to go on. And maybe because they knew more inner workings of the business, it was easier to have that conversation. But I've always felt like I was very easier direct with them. But it just eats me alive because I know the repercussions on the other side, because I know their family, we're all family.
You're still going to have family occasions together.
Yeah. It's like you let them go and it's like, hey, are you going to be there Saturday for the birthday?
Right.
Yeah. Well, and Leigh talking about fit, one of the other things is, are we making sure we're encouraging people to think outside the family business for what they are made to do or their best fit is? And, I know at least one or actually 2 organizations that I worked with that were family businesses. They had a requirement. You had to work for 2 to 5 years outside the family business after graduating from at least high school. Another one said you had to graduate from college or you couldn't work in the family business, and for at least 2 to 5 years. Although you're just not allowed. You've got to go get your feet wet somewhere else and prove you're employable somewhere else first and foremost, but also because you bring a different perspective when you've learned from another organization. And so it actually strengthened, and you had more respect if you came in and said, yeah, I was moving up in this organization. I got my feet wet here and I cut my teeth somewhere else. And you came in with a different perspective than only in the family business. Now, that's not to say that's always wrong either. You can do that well too.
Well, I mean, I'm an example of that. Didn't go after college. I didn't go back to the family business for almost 10 years.
Wow.
And spent a lot of time learning and doing other things outside of the family business, which gave me a totally different perspective by the time I came back, David. It also to your point, to be candid, it also showed that I didn't need the family business. It wasn't something that I needed to be able to be successful in what I did. But coming back also was an opportunity, like I said the last time, to be able to spend the time working with my dad, which I thought was a gift to have that opportunity to work closely together. Again, I don't think I would have been as valuable or useful to the business. Now, that's me saying I was valuable. Others may think differently. But I felt I came with that perspective that David suggested of seeing other things, other businesses run certain way, other situations occurring, and me having to deal myself personally with how to manage those situations, and then being able to carry that learning with me back, which we would call transferable capabilities that were acquired to bring it back into the family business. So
Right.
anyway,
That's awesome.
I think it's useful to understand. And I like the idea. All the good family businesses I know, typically the people do not start right away in the family business. They have grown up in it, like David said. However, the ones that really are stronger are the ones where people actually had to go out and do something different.
I love that. I think there's a ton of value in that. So kind of switching gears a little bit.
Yes.
Potentia has a ton of tools and resources, really, really helpful for families, individuals, groups, and businesses. Let's start with the groups, and let's start with you, Leigh. Let's go into those tools, because a lot of I really, really like this, because for me, it takes the emotion out of it and is like the not the facts are fact, but like the data is the data, the assessments, the tools are the tools, and we're just playing the best organizational coach and putting the right pieces together. So this helps, a guy like me that hates making those, theoretical decisions, especially playing with the family side of business.
Mm-hmm.
So let's jump into those tools, because I know Potentia has some great resources.
Well, one that David and I have talked about this many a time. Managing by Values is a program that we have, which is a process. Dr. O'Connor wrote the book on that, Managing by Values, many years ago. In fact, I was working as a consultant and I read the book, and that's how I got to know Dr. O'Connor. I called him up, said, how do I use this properly? And so, interesting enough, he had me come up to where he was. I spent 2 days with him understanding how to use it. There was a company and a friend of mine's company that was very interested in understanding how to grow and develop his business. And he realized that having clarity around decision making using the values, and these are organizational values, not personal values, would be the best thing to do. So I came back and worked with him, and it was very interesting. We were sitting with his senior leaders, probably a room of 10 people, including himself. They were a property management company, still are actually, very successful. And he had moved his headquarters out of a building into a new building right up the street. In that transition, he prior to had said to the tenant that was living below him, which covered the entire commercial space below him, that he would redo the floor, which was a concrete floor that needed to be taken care of. The tenant came back, a little bit later, interesting enough, around the exact time we were doing the values, and went to the property manager and said, what are you guys going to do? We had made an agreement. You've already sold it. You got to follow up on what you said. So we sit in the meeting. This owner said to the group, okay, here's our dilemma. I want you to ask yourself this question now. We're going to ask the question when we're done with this process. What would you do? Would you honor the commitment and take care of what we said we were going to do? Or is it no longer our problem and it's now the new owner's problem? 50% of the room said it's the new owner's problem, not ours. The other 50% said we should take it on. Go through the process. They came up with 3 values: integrity, caring, and success. Well, the integrity, and it's in order. You have to do it priority-wise because that's how decisions are made. And the key action was to be honest and truthful in our commitments and follow through. So he turned to the group And he said, okay, based on the work, and it was 2 days worth of work, what do you think our answer is to this past tenant? 100% said we need to honor our commitment. There wasn't even a discussion after that point. And he loved it. He sat back, and to this day, so this was probably over 25 years ago, working with him on it. And he lives by them. They're alive and well in that organization, and they use them every single day with making decisions. They identify a value to a decision that's made. So it takes out the notion of being person-centered versus results focused and performance focused. And it's not that I have anything against who that person is. It's just that this is the actions that we agreed to. Either I'm going to follow the actions or not. And it's very clean and every time.
Leigh, what I love about what you said too is in talking about the values make the decisions, right?
Yes.
And so in what you just said, I think that's the most powerful part, in that if we truly do live by our values, we're managing by values. We're not managing by family.
Correct.
Family
right. Exactly.
We're not managing because David's had a rough month or a rough year, and so we're gonna go soft on him this year, or he earned this job, but we really feel like, oh boy, he shouldn't have earned it this fast, right? And so we're going to hold him in a different role. You go back to the values help make that decision for the family, which is why it's so critical. And the beautiful thing is, when you have a family business, when you do it right, you integrate some of those family values into your company values, but then you also realize that not all family values should be in the company and some should be outside, right? Because employment in the company should be conditional on alignment with the company values, not family values. Those are different. And so separating those two can really be helpful, and even have outside third parties. I know sometimes I was brought in with family business discussions. They just said, hey, here are our values. David, help us make a decision based on the values. We're family. We're too wrapped around these. We're too enmeshed with each other that help facilitate this discussion for us. And we're confident the values will help us decide. We just need a third party arbiter, which I'm convinced almost every family business, if you've been in business for more than a couple years, find a good, trusted, capable advisor who you can call in when you need it, because you will.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You need an arbiter at some point. The values can only go so far. With that, I agree. And the values are the tool for which to make that happen, because our biases start to get in the way. And with that at the same time.
And one of the other things, and Jason, you've learned a little bit about this process too, and heard me say, in any business, but especially family business, when we're looking at where to put people, it's a minimum of 3 fits. And the first fit is always culture fit, by which we mean they model the company values. And it shouldn't be that family members are almost as good as others to get promoted. It should be they are exceptional and they're better at modeling the values than others in order to get promoted, because there's other downsides that come with being a family member. Your name is going to allow you to say and do certain things, whether you think they should or not. Other people are going to treat you differently. So you should be more aligned with the company values. If you're not a model, you don't go past. It doesn't matter how capable you are. It doesn't matter what numbers you're putting up. It doesn't matter how critical you are to the organization. You do not get promoted.
Right.
Right.
No, I love that.
Starting with culture fit, and then looking at second is motivation fit. Is it something that has purpose and meaning and is passionate for that person? So we know it's the right fit. I can't tell you how many family members I know in family businesses who are miserable because they're capable, but they don't like the work they're doing. But they're stuck because the family says, yeah, but you're the best at it. And it's slowly eating away at their soul. And they're doing it out of the best of intention and commitment to the family, but it's just eroding their soul. And so culture fit, second, motivation fit, which is related to their satisfaction in the role. And then third is capability. So we only get to capability after the other two.
Yeah. And I'd add to that, your point is the job fit versus character fit. And many times people spend the time on the job fit. So here's a great example of somebody who was really strong in sales, and they thought as a family member, well, they should take over and run sales. The key is they were running over people, telling them, dictating, demanding, micromanaging how it is. I mean, we all know what that feels like. And like David said, the character fit is, first is to align and demonstrate behaviorally the values. And if you are treating others not well, it doesn't give you the right to do that, even as a family member. And that's where, if done well, employees have the right, and I always said this in my business, you have the right to call me out with the values if I'm operating inappropriately. And that's why I always talked with my clients. Your employees have the right to call you out if you're not operating inside the values. There is no other context for which you operate.
Right.
And many a time says, well, this time we could overlook it. No, you never can overlook it. It is the foundation for which we operate.
Absolutely. And and the values and leadership starts from the top, right? And
Yes.
especially, and as we know, even if say dad or brother or sister is at the top and you have shared that last name, or they know it's the same, right? And so you got to make, and that's where, I cared about our family name with my brothers and everybody is like, we got to make sure that we're the examples, because us three touched every part of the business. We got to make sure we're the examples for the culture and for our values.
Exactly.
And I think that, and again, I think my brothers did a fantastic job doing that, which I'm very grateful they did. But I also seen it the opposite way of where, I'm watching, a TV show right now called Dutton Ranch. And the first episode,
absolutely. Love it.
they kick one of their brothers, or she makes him, kicks him out of the family kind of. And I'm like, oh, there are a lot of business that have those. I've been very, very grateful that I had awesome brothers, and but we also have amazing parents that taught us a lot. So.
And it's interesting too. I know we'll build, based on an organization's values, a custom values assessment as well to get feedback from others, which is important, because it also is nice as a CEO or leader in an organization to have those to be able to hold yourself accountable to. And I know one family business, the CEO called me, and he actually, after he copied me on a message to all of his employees, because I was working with him and he's trying to be a more values-driven leader. And he was in a meeting, all hands meeting with his company. It wasn't huge, about 25, 30 employees. And he dressed somebody down. He got into a negative state, and he said some things he wasn't proud of. And he went home, and one of his family members was just like, hey man, we've got these values. Are we going to use them or not? Because that was not cool. Right. And so, the next day he wrote, and there were the employees that weren't in there. He's like, well, I know you've all heard about what happened yesterday by now, but I'm here to let you know, I let the entire company down because this value right here, here's where I failed. And I failed miserably. And I want you all to hold me to account and let me know if this ever happens again. Speak to me, speak to someone else. But, I let you down, and we're a values driven company, and it starts from here, and I'm committing to doing better, and which he did. But taking that full responsibility to not justify it, not say, well, my sister or brother shouldn't have said that. They knew it was going to set me off, and justify it. It was no, the value said, I need to be better than that.
Right. No, I love that. And I like that because, again, for my personality, I like to just default to get something and be like, oh, it's not me saying that. It's our culture. It's our values. It's the, foundational pieces of the business. It's not me saying that you don't have an integrity. It's our definition of integrity saying you don't have that. Right. And I like that. I mean, if you do it right, then you have a lot of your peers, or other business people inside the business holding everybody accountable and like, hey, we don't do it like that. And so, but if I was in that business and I had that CEO, say that, I think, okay, that takes a lot of a person to admit that they did something wrong. So that's, that kind of shows me who that person is. So I think that's awesome.
To add to that, Jason, just before we move on, it's very important to know that the process also involves all the employees. It's not the values are brought down to them. That you have a focus group with them. And then what you do, sometimes not, they may say they want to understand what a word means. They may not like a particular word. They may have a better suggestion. You allow them to incorporate some of the language in there but not changing the meaning, as well as allow them to tell stories from their perspective of what that value looks like in action. And you start getting them to share those stories. Another organization that I deal with is a healthcare company. They do a whole thing through the course of the year where they ask members of each part of the organization to identify on a regular basis some key people who've gone and out beyond the call of duty on the values and are great representations of the values. And once a year, they bring the entire organization together and they celebrate those stories of people who truly, truly demonstrated those values. And those stories, they bring you to tears.
Right.
And then they create a video of that, clips of that story, and that runs all the time for that year for the employees.
Right.
And there are people who work in housekeeping who get that, from somebody who's in the maintenance who get it, from people who are, whether they're in the nursing or whatever. It's from every level and every part of the organization. And it's extremely touching to hear them discuss it. And this is probably 20 years on the run of them doing this.
Wow. I mean, you actually taught me that. I don't know if you remember that. I was like, what am I supposed to do when I go to my stores? And you were like, I would go to the general manager and ask for 2 employees that have emulated your values, and then go talk to them. And I used to carry these $25 Amazon gift cards in my pocket, and I would just give them a $25 Amazon gift card. I'm like, hey, thank you so much. I heard that, last night you stayed super late because this person had some issues, was trying to get back on the road. That means a lot to, my family. And that, like, literally was the only thing I ever had to do when I went to the store. And like, I think people started to buy in, and then people were trying to do extra just so then I would give them, maybe just for the gift cards, but then it helped because, they're emulating our values. And then I'd hear them talk to customers, like our technicians were talking to our customers during walkthroughs about our values. And I'm like, I don't think you would find that at a normal dealership, right? Like, especially in the RV business, it's a little
terrific.
Past time.
That's the way to do it.
Shout out to you.
Leigh, what you're talking about is really helpful in managing that culture for family businesses. And also, I think to build on that is to understand that it's a whole system. It's not just slapping some values on the wall and agreeing to them and everyone feels nice. It's practicing them is where you get the real value. And there's a way to do it, and there's a way to get it wrong. Unfortunately, most organizations get it wrong, but that catching people doing things right is the part that we're all excited about, et cetera. But what the research Dr. O'Connor is shown is that less than 2% of all employees are fully aligned with the company's values because they're so lofty. And so as managers and leaders, family or not, the real value comes in with the systems and processes around alignment. Okay. And so celebrating high alignment and then redirecting and eliminating low alignment. And so you have to be able to redirect that lower alignment, or those values gaps are just as critical, if not more critical, right? Because you get one person who gets away with it because they put up big numbers or something, or they're a family member, and then your culture's toast, right? Because you're a hypocrite. Exactly. And so that's why the values rule. They sit above everybody in the organization, above the CEO, above the owners, et cetera. And that knowing the ins and outs of really building that system to right size to your organization, and then knowing how that changes as an organization grows, is also critical to family businesses.
Right. No, I love that. I know we're a little bit over time. David, the 5 factors of highly effective teams assessment, I know that's something we wanted to talk about as another tool that Potentia has. A few minutes, let's dive into that. And then I think we're going to have another episode on some family business stuff, because I think this is awesome. And I think that there's so many people out there that need to know this, because it is really it sometimes seems like it's the Wild West, because you don't feel like you can tell people, your family, what they get. It kind of is the Wild West. So I love what we're talking about.
Yeah. I'll keep it brief, because the 5 factors of highly effective teams is probably a episode in and of itself.
I mean, and I kind of actually want to spend some time on that, so we could save it for our next recording if that works.
Well, I'll give you a little precursor, or
okay.
And so the first thing we always look at, and what we do with family business here, is we look at them as an entity, as family, as a family team within the family business. And so there are some foundational things that, and I'll just mention the first two here, which are really critical, maybe three. And the first one is, do we have a common purpose? So it sounds obvious, but when we collect that feedback, we usually, when Leigh and I do this, we'll collect it anonymously. And then we might know who it is or not, depending on the scenario and the situation. But we'll plot it then and show how similar or different people are with regards to how well are we living our values and our vision. Do we have a clear direction, and our family members on the same page or not on the same page? And it could be on the same page, meaning that we're doing awesome, but it could also mean we're on the same page, meaning our back's against the wall and we're in survival mode. Or is it all over the spectrum? And so it's when it's all over the spectrum that you know you've got some work to do.
Right.
I mean, it could be something as simple as mom and dad have never shared the numbers, so all the kids think the family business is fat and happy, and mom and dad have leveraged their house and their car and their vacation home, and they're actually upside down. And
right.
The kids are going, I want to raise, and they don't get it. I've seen that happen, right? And so it can vary, but you start off with that. Is reality, essentially we're asking in the family business, is everyone sharing the same reality? And if not, we better get that figured out before we move anywhere else, because if we're playing different games, that we're never going to have agreement and comfort. And then the second one is, once we've done that, do we have agreed upon accountabilities? Where do my accountabilities stop and start? Where are my decision rights? Is it within this department? Is it just me and myself? Am I leading a department? Am I part of more of a leadership team or an ownership team? Do I sit on a board as an employee and I've got two very different hats? And so, maybe for a couple times a year as a board member, I get to make very strategic decisions, but 99.9% of the year, I'm an employee who has no ability to tell anyone else what to do or how to do it. I take orders from a manager. That's a possibility. And so getting really clear on those accountabilities sets us up for the third factor, which is then effectively communicating with each other. Okay. And so
huge one.
That starts getting into a lot of the other tools, but those three oftentimes can be a 2 to 3 year process in and of themselves with a family business. Wow. And any business as well. I mean, all these principles apply to other businesses as well, but there are some unique components to that. So those three are the foundation for any team. And knowing how to draw those out, find out whether we're on the same page or not, and then build skills around those is the foundation for family businesses and other businesses as well.
I love that. I can't wait to even dive into that more, deeper in the next episode. Leigh, David, thank you so much for this. Very, very excited to have the next episode. If you want to learn a lot about Potentia's tools, what David was just talking about, and some of the P6 methods for family, tune into the next episode next week, because we are going to be following that up right now, and we're going to be doing another episode. So again, Leigh, David, thank you so much. This is my favorite day of the week when we get to do this. So thank you. If you like this episode, please share it. If you want to know more information about Potentia, it's potentia.solutions. Go on there, and as always, you can hit me up at Jason Haugen on Instagram. And yeah, thank you for the feedback. Keep the feedback coming. We're very excited to do this, and we'll see you on the next episode of Culture Camp. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Thank you, everyone.